The best graphics, the best sound, the best music, the best gameplay. These were the things that Crysis was known for, each entry to its own degree, but it was only in Crysis 2 that those things were brought to a console market. It was only then that Crysis could get the recognition it deserved. It didn't do so well, but with Crysis 3 already in the oven and Crytek's will to make their series one of the greats, they decided to try again. Crysis 3 had 23 months in development, half that of Crysis 2. But with CryEngine 3 already perfected, Crytek could prioritize cold hard video game development over those 2 years. They knew what upset people about Crysis 2, and they knew what went well. Crysis 3 was all about integration, pleasing fans of the first games and maintaining the console audience gained by Crysis 2, and with a core design philosophy in mind, Crytek got to work. The first point to address was of course level design. They couldn't go back to the openness of Lingshan, but they had to differentiate themselves from the tightness of New York City. The result? New York City, but veganized. The events of Crysis 2 didn't bode so well for the Big Apple, so now nature has taken over. Cell, in the world's weakness, had taken the opportunity to seize control of these green wastes and build a superstructure called the Liberty Dome over Manhattan. Technology contrasting with nature. This was the theme that would end up inspiring the narrative of Crysis 3, the idea of a hunter stalking its prey as we've been doing from the very beginning. The bow was introduced as a weapon the player would permanently have available, which would bring new stealth and assault opportunities, but the maps had to account for that. And they did. Crytek calls their new level design action bubbles, a cute term for saying much more open. These routes strung throughout levels we saw in Crysis 2 are no longer drainage pipes or a smashed-in storefront, but an entirely new area. Levels aren't as mathematically spacious as Crysis 1, but multiple combat arenas and points of interest can now be found in the same area, with no loading screens or objective markers disincentivizing you from exploring them. There's a reason for every structure in Crysis 3's levels to exist, and you're always free to decide where to go next. That was the plan of integration as far as level design was concerned, but Crytek still wanted their linear sections for the players to see what they called Michael Bay moments. A Crytek developer says, "So if we want to make sure you experience a massive Michael Bay moment, then it's no good to place you in the middle of a big grass field, then crossing your fingers and hoping you will see it." For Crytek, the game's success would be measured in the amount of fans pleased. They'd been to both extremes, they'd had their time with both audiences. Now it was time to craft something that everyone could enjoy. Now was the time for Crysis to meet its maximum potential. Sounds good, right? Here's what I left out. Crysis 3 was the 4th Crysis game. Crytek had done nothing but slave over their golden franchise for the past 6 years. For much of the team, it was time to move on. With Rise, Son of Rome and Homefront 2 in the oven, Crysis 3 was left with 100 employees, 23 months and a boatload of cash to craft a game that would appeal to fans of Crysis 1 and Warhead, that would appeal to fans of Crysis 2, that would once again set the bar for graphics while running on hardware from the Stone Age, and that would tell not only its own unique story, but also conclude a 4-game spanning plot and give closure on the entire surviving cast of characters. Plain sailing. And the result? Crysis 3 is the best and worst Crysis game. At one point I was ready to place it among the greatest FPS games ever made. At another I wanted nothing more than to delete this insult from my memory. I'm not trying to be awkward. Crysis 3 is the most conflicted game I've ever played. In quality, in story, in gameplay, in art, in themes, in focus. If the phrase identity crisis was ever going to get used to describe a game, this was it. It's a conflict rooted into every aspect of the game, and yet it can be visualized effortlessly. The first half of the game was incredible, and the second half of the game was awful. Crysis 3 is indescribable. I honestly couldn't give it a rating out of 10 if you put a gun to my head. I have never seen before a game so good and so bad at the same time. I have never seen a game go from a franchise-defining masterpiece to an insult that I wanted to forget in the span of 10 minutes. The only way I can frame this for you is to describe both the missions and the story at the same time in a more critique-style format because their quality is linked. I also won't be talking about multiplayer in this video because I don't want any interruptions and I really don't think it's worth your time. So let's begin. Crysis 3 begins 24 years after Crysis 2. In that time, Prophet had used the suit to destroy every Ceph spore disperser like the one we fought in the last game, and had learned on his journey that there was a being called the Alpha Ceph at the helm of the alien presence on Earth. Prophet and the only known surviving member of Raptor Team, Psycho, a British Cockney yobbo, had decided to hunt down the Alpha Ceph. They tracked it to Siberia, but Cell disabled them with anti-nanosuit K-volts. Psycho was skinned of his nanosuit, Prophet remained on a Cell cargo ship where he still is now. A pretty cool setup, huh? No. You have to look this up. For everyone else, be them Crysis vets, people who got started in Crysis 2, or people who are just starting now, you're left with a cutscene of some guys in hoodies killing some Cell soldiers as they try and free Prophet. Of course, Prophet instantly recognizes Psycho, but anyone who hadn't played 1 or Warhead remains lost. Well, whatever. The game itself begins now. Psycho lectures you on what Cell have been up to in the time you've been asleep as you walk through some kind of ocean-built structure resembling an oil rig. The rain and water here are Crytek's showcase. They want you to know that Crysis 3 would once again set the bar in terms of visual fidelity. But this is all set up for the entry into Cell's nanodome, much like the level itself. Your first combat arena is something familiar. Crysis 2's simple, restrictive level design, but with 3's new vents to crawl through, a logical addition. It's here that 3's gameplay perfections become apparent, and it's important to remember that Crysis 3's gameplay perfects Crysis 2's. It makes few attempts to be anything of its own, but for now the most noticeable change is Prophet's speed. He feels twice as fast as Alcatraz without sprinting, and he doesn't consume any suit energy when he is. This is a smart compensation for Crysis 3's wider level design, or at least it seems that way. Melee, which felt like you were attacking with water balloons last game, has undergone multiple changes. Now you use your fists instead of the rifle, which immediately does its work in making melee feel more powerful. But even better, if you hit someone in the back, you can see that power. Grabs are far more fluid than 2's system, you can now throw and kill far quicker. It makes close quarters combat far more satisfying, an excellent set of improvements. After you've dealt with Cell, Psycho gives you a bow. Prophet doesn't like it, but he'll have to suck it up. You get 9 normal arrows, 3 explodey arrows, 3 explodey arrows but on a timer this time, and 3 zappy arrows. You can also customize draw weight, but the game never encourages that in difficulty, enemy design, or engagement distance. It's a nice option, but pretty much pointless. Much like having 2 types of arrows that do the same thing. Ignoring questionable balancing, the bow itself feels incredible to use. It's accurate and looks and sounds great. The game opens up almost immediately, the perfect engagement distance for the bow. It's hugely sensitive and easy to miss, but it also costs 0 energy when firing from stealth. It's the only stealth weapon you'll ever need, especially since the explosive arrows can take out an entire group without coming out of cloak. Thankfully, since the player will be just getting used to it, its true effectiveness doesn't become apparent just yet. You might even be thrown off by Cell's new AI. They still work off the same last known position system as last game, but they flank, throw accurate grenades, and use cover appropriately. It makes for a more satisfying combat system, but the old bouncing grenades into their own faces problem returns and is still absolutely ridiculous. Cell are also voiced far more effectively this time round. They have actual conversations, and those can even be quite funny at times. It's part of Crytek's attempt at making the game feel more human, which can even be seen in Prophet and Psycho. Animations are now mocapped, and they even use face cap on important characters. It works wonders for the immersion, especially when coupled with the writing. And I'm talking dialogue, not plot. Psycho and Prophet are written exquisitely in this game. 2 contrasting personalities with all of the background weight of the past few games not only leads to some excellent humor, but also heart-wrenching emotional scenes. And it's not just their personalities that contrast, it's that Prophet has a nanosuit and Psycho is just a normal human. This allows the story to raise questions about the suits and humanity itself, which we'll see later. For now, we get an excellently performed scene with Psycho promising to find whoever skinned him.
I will find you. I will fucking find you!
Further up, you'll need to hack a door to get into the final combat arena. It's a tiny minigame, which means pretty much nothing. You can also hack a turret to turn it on Cell, which looks cool the first time through. The final arena has the only real use for explosive arrows in the level, in the form of a helicopter. And to compensate for that, you've got a very large space to run in. This highlights a problem with Crysis 3's new sprinting system. It has no energy cost to increase the pace and to compensate for larger distances, but that takes away as much as it adds. In Crysis 2, if you ran out of energy, you'd be stuck out in the open with barely any defense. It was a death sentence to punish lack of forward thinking. In Crysis 3, you have no such issues, which dramatically reduces difficulty. You can run and slide from every bad situation in the game, no matter what. And that wouldn't be so angering were it not for the very obvious solution to this issue: bringing back maximum speed. Now you can be fast enough to keep the pace up and have its use remain firmly tactical. You solved this problem 6 years ago, Crytek. Good God. I thought it would have been obvious if they wanted to get back fans of Crysis 1 and Warhead for Crysis 3, but apparently not, and maximum strength remains absent for seemingly no reason. Anyway, after that, Psycho shows you Cell's nanodome and the pair promise to take down Cell, ending the mission. This was a well-designed tutorial, with great combat arenas showing off gameplay at a multitude of engagement distances, all while looking smashing and introducing new mechanics and improvements at the right time. It is an excellent opening level. We start off on a good note with Psycho joking around with Prophet, one of the many examples of how good the contrasting personalities are for the narrative. Before you make it out of the facility though, you can pick up some kind of nano upgrade, and so begins Crysis 3's upgrade system. The extra development time did its work on Crysis 2's skeleton of a system. There's now a huge selection of upgrades to choose from, with their effectiveness balanced by their cost, and of course the fact that you can only have one from each of the 4 columns active at a time. You're given 4 points, which is enough to buy anything, but from there you're never given anything again, and it's up to you to find them in the levels. And to add another layer of depth, you can upgrade your upgrades by completing challenges relevant to that playstyle. An unnecessary but more than welcome addition. With hopes high, we exit the facility into the Green Wilds. The Liberty Dome is undoubtedly Crytek's magnum opus from a presentation standpoint. It's fucking gorgeous. The derelict buildings, rusted cars, thick grass, massive metal structures in the sky. It makes Crysis 2 look like Minesweeper, even though 2 is far more consistent. Graphics can't carry a game, but by fuck, Crysis 3 pushes that statement with the Liberty Dome. Never before has such a large chunk of my enjoyment of a game been down to looking at it, and this was on low settings due to Crysis 3's CPU problems. Nothing has matched the Liberty Dome in 4 years, not even the Arc from Titanfall 2. Presentation doesn't just come from graphics though, there's a story to it. Psycho describes the truth of Cell's dominance. They're producing free energy, which meant no one could compete with them. Work camps, curfews, lifelong debt. You head up to a gate littered with anti-trespassing mines. They only detonate if you're not with Cell, but you hack to get past them. They do a great job of building the oppressive narrative surrounding this place. Them, along with the security towers that scan for and exterminate intruders. It's a World War II vibe, but we've not forgotten about the Ceph. A deactivated pinger causes an energy surge in Prophet's suit. The pair brush it off as nothing more than a one-off, as the Ceph are thought to be, for the most part, dead. Psycho says you can only go round the security tower. Prophet argues against that, saying there's enough time to cut straight through, ignoring the fact that Psycho would never make it without a nanosuit. This is one of the most effective scenes in Crysis 3. Prophet sees himself as a machine, but Psycho is only human. Again, the contrast of technology against nature. It's no surprise that you'll be sticking with Psycho for the duration of the game. It's a mature enough, developing, well-acted and well-written scene that stands as evidence that Prophet and Psycho are the best thing the story has to offer. You move on. Apparently there's some hardware in the kill zone that you can use to disable the tower. You have to move in cloak using the remains of New York as your cover from the tower's gaze. It's here that 3's action bubble design becomes apparent. You have multiple objectives to choose from in a wide open area. You can do them in any order you please with no strings attached. This is Crytek's way of really tutorializing their new design. They get you using their stealth mechanics without the need for combat. They introduce you to their objective structure, all while bathing you in this oppressive atmosphere in such a beautiful area. But in reality, you can go to all 4 likely spots and come back with nothing. Only once you've been through all of them will you find the weapon. A Ceph bolt sniper, one which Prophet is somehow able to integrate with and use to blow up the security tower. This scares Psycho, but he's happier that Cell takes a loss. You move up to confront Cell in a lake. The game uses water much more than Crysis 2 did, mainly for visuals and the whole hunter vibe, but also for gameplay. Using electric arrows, you can kill multiple targets and have a much more forgiving kill radius with the bow. This arena is beautifully structured and serves to get you used to the combat in the jungle environment. You get your first secondary objective here too. These return from Crysis 1 and Warhead, where they serve to make use of the open environments by giving legitimate incentive to go off the beaten track and fight through some more enemies. In those games, you'd get a weapon to deal with a tank that's been harassing you or some fire support from friendlies. Here, it's much the same. The return of secondaries come naturally with the increased scale of levels, but in this mission, you get a very simple upgrade point. You push through into some warehouses with Psycho. He voices his concerns about your link to the Ceph. Apparently, some don't believe Prophet is even human anymore. Crytek makes a smart play of the questions raised by Crysis 2's ending. Prophet is a mind controlling another man's body. Is he human anymore? You won't have much time to ponder this as you come into another arena with Cell, and it's here that the hacking system's flaws become truly apparent. Before, it was just a tiny minigame to slow the pace when appropriate, nothing worthy of discussion. Here, it takes away from the game. Sometimes tactical shooters should encourage you to slow down, sure, but in every situation hacking helps you in combat, it is literally the correct answer. Is there a turret in the room? You could fight it and all the other soldiers with the game's combat system. Or, you could play a minigame and have the game kill them for you. Hacking is easier, quicker, and infinitely more boring. You could just use an explosive arrow to kill the turret, sure, but A, you may not have one, and B, it only takes a few more seconds of effort to have the turret kill every soldier in the room. You don't have to hack, but it's shoved in your face with the visor and early tutorialization. With the previous game's tactical options, while it could have taken away from the exploration aspect of the game, it was never intrusive and it only served to help people who prefer a quicker playstyle. Here, hacking doesn't serve any playstyles. Having the game play itself is not a playstyle, but it is tempting, even if you know it's less fun, and that is destructive. Crytek's not done yet with weird-ass mechanics though. A few rooms after, you encounter Cell being slaughtered by some kind of Ceph that hides and pounces from the tall grass, and the only way to progress is through it. The moment you make contact with the ground, you can hear their metallic running and see the red eyes through the grass. The AI, sound and visuals are done perfectly to make you feel hunted. If you stay for too long, the stalkers pop out. You can kill them, they don't take much fire, or just progress ahead. Prophet tells Psycho that the Ceph have returned, but Psycho already knows. Apparently the stalkers are just strays left after New York. Prophet agrees since they clearly have no attachment to the hive mind, or they'd be far more intelligent. You push into another room filled with Cell and a turret. Thankfully, the turret's placed high enough so you actually have to play the game a little before you can hack it. That verticality is common in Crysis 3. Crytek is still using the city environment to create multiple layers of level. It's just that these areas are typically far more spread out. More on this later, because the next section is a lot more interesting. Once again, the stalkers show up, but this time you've got to push through them. No direction, no easy exit. The lack of objective markers works wonders here to create that sense of being lost and hunted in a wide arena. You can complete the secondary objective and get your HUD back up and running though, which is the first proper use of the system. It's a great expansion of the stalker idea. With only minor clues in the way the rusted train cars are laid out, you eventually stumble upon Psycho. Then it's some hilarious dialogue.
Improvise? What the fucking hell do you mean improvise? Where's your plan B? Okay, so there's a tunnel. You think it'll take us to Broad Street? You're sure about that, are you, sunshine?
And a turret section until you figure out that the only way to escape is by pushing a train car full of highly explosive material down a track, which ends up sending you barreling through Cell armor and into a crash which you barely survive. Prophet detonates the train to block Cell out, and Psycho says a trailer quote.
Well, I don't know about you, but I call that fucking flawless.
What a mission. We had excellent tutorialization of level design, good level design flat out, good use of secondary objectives, a well-developed upgrade system, the best visuals I've ever seen, generally good combat encounters, a brilliantly creative stalker mechanic, flawless writing, good characters whose personalities contrast well enough to create some hilarious banter, environmental storytelling, a good raising tension for the inevitable Ceph return, well-sold hunter themes, and an action-packed ending. Probably one of the best levels I've ever played in my life, let alone one of the best levels in Crysis. This game is looking up. This one starts where we left off. Psycho brings us into the rebel camp and introduces us to Claire, the unqualified leader of what's left. She's immediately wary of Prophet, questioning his humanity and connection to the Ceph, but Psycho calms her down. We also meet Carl Ernst Rasch, Hargreaves' partner in crime. Hargreave tells us in Crysis 2 that Rasch chose a different path to immortality than he did, but the only weird thing about Rasch here is the fact that the suit can't scan him. Rasch tells us that it's because he designed the suit, and Prophet goes along with it. Prophet also tells everyone about his visions and that Cell's free energy source is going to destroy the world. Quite prophetic, as Rasch says. He asks if that is intentional. I think all the members of Raptor Team lived up to their names in the end. Aztec was immediately wiped out by superior technology. Jester was a more casual, laid-back kind of character. Nomad travelled around in the most open game in the series. Psycho was just a bit of a yob, and of course, Prophet is the only one with a connection to the Ceph. I too wonder if that was intentional. Maybe Crytek only just realised here. Either way, you go off with Psycho to take down Cell once and for all. Cell are running their power grid off System X, but strangely, they have a backup hydroelectric dam. Psycho thinks that's just for redundancy, but Prophet theorizes that there's something about System X that scares Cell. Either way, the best course of action is to disable the hydro dam. Here is one of the most obvious action bubbles in the game. You get a city block of swamps laced between rusted buildings to fight your way up to the dam. Stealth, full frontal, any approach you like can work, but not very well. In reality, the swamp is very simple. There's little verticality or complexity. It's just get from A to B in any way you like. There's no big security outpost you could disable with a secondary objective, no tank you could get, no sniping post other than that one guy in an exposed area right next to where you're meant to get to anyway. It's big and beautiful, but also very empty and, like the water level, shallow. It's too open. That's odd, and it highlights Crysis 3's biggest gameplay problem. Prophet's gameplay is almost the exact same as Alcatraz's. In fact, the only noticeable change is the removal of sprint energy drain to compensate for the wider arenas and lower time to kill on enemies from Prophet. But there's a problem with this. Alcatraz was designed specifically to work in close quarters. Such is obvious with the removal of prone and maximum speed, along with the increased recoil on weapons and higher resilience. Nomad was quite the opposite. He was faster, had far less recoil to deal with, a lower time to kill on both him and his enemies, leans to the left and to the right to compensate for that, and a prone position to engage enemies reliably at range. Crysis 3 wants to go for open areas, but with close quarters gameplay. There's a conflict here, and it hurts. Fact is, Prophet sucks at range, and even though Crysis 3 isn't as open as 1, many of its engagement distances aren't far off. Mid to long range is far more common than short range, and there we have to suffer inaccurate weapons. Snipe is about as stable as Jim Carrey on crack, and no leans or prone, meaning the only way to fight back is to take aim and cloak. We always have the bow, true, but we don't always have arrows. Fact is, guns blazing doesn't work in this game. Well, at least not with conventional weaponry. In close areas like missions 1 and 2, it feels even better than Crysis 2 with melee refinements and a quicker speed, but everywhere else, you get found, you either hide or die. You don't have the speed to dodge bullets and quickly zip over to your attacker as you did in Crysis 1, and you don't have the prone stance or leans to be able to respond with normal weapons at a long range either. So, you run away, cloak, take aim and chip them away again. Crysis 3 gives plenty of choices, but if you want to be having fun, the only choice in these wide open areas is stealth. It's funny because at no point can Prophet ever have as much cloak time as Alcatraz could with Cloak Enhance. After you've stealthed your way through that, you can either go up the elevator on your left or your right of the dam. Doesn't matter which, there'll be a kill team that you can escape by jumping into the elevator shaft in both. On the top of the dam there's 2 stations and a bunch of guys. You can use the water behind the dam or the bridge itself. It's pretty clear which is meant to appeal to each playstyle. There's also plenty of opportunity for sniping with clear sightlines and 2 snipers in the starting zone. The stations each have grates and laser grids to get to the generators themselves, which you can destroy. Once they're both down, you need an exit plan. Cell are swarming, but Prophet comes up with a plan. He places C4 on a structural weakness as Cell attack with helicopters and boats, and like a Class A badass, he dives out, detonates the charges, and rides down a zipline. Remember how I said that Crysis 2 made the nanosuit out to be weak? Well, Crysis 3 fixes that. That is the nanosuit. The dam bursts and floods the swamp, washing you and Cell into the city. Claire thinks you're a muppet, but it's okay because you can get high. You progress through the flooded roads and fight Cell further up. If you find a cave with a helicopter, there's a panel you can pick up containing access codes to the Nexus where System X is located, giving you a much easier time getting in. This is a secondary objective done perfectly. The Nexus is a vertical, circular combat arena, and it's great fun to fight through. Its circular design ends up being an introduction to other arenas throughout the game. Cell are of course plentiful here, but there's a new security robot too. A turret on wheels, effectively. This guy gives another use for the explosive and electric arrows, which is, again, unnecessary, but an entirely welcome level of depth. The Nexus is the best example that Crytek haven't forgotten how to balance the player's power with weapons. Powerful weapons, new attachments, and resupplies are still tucked into arenas to give players a wider range of weapons to play with, and an appropriate opportunity to use them. This was probably a lot easier to do with the more enclosed areas like the Nexus, but I think they did the open ones well too. Snipers are placed in snipey spots, typhoons and shotguns are placed in close range areas, and a general mix of weaponry can be found with a bit of exploration. Hacking is used well for this too. Cell weapon caches are also placed around, and if you need the extra firepower, you can hack in, have the door pop off, and get at the goods. With the Nexus complete, you get in the elevator and ride down into the depths of System X, where you hit 2 buttons and then shoot a turret. Yeah, don't know why this is here apart from to raise the tension with Prophet's visions. After that, you go up to the top, fight through 4 guys, and disable the tower as victory is declared. Except not really. Apparently, System X's power source is the Alpha Ceph. Shocking, I know. It's not like every mission beforehand had been slowly hyping this up. At first, I thought this was Transformers product placement, but no, apparently Devastator's one bot is the Alpha Ceph. He escapes, System X self-destructs, Prophet does a cool, and Psycho says fuck.
Oh, fuck me!
A beam in the sky then opens up, and Psycho and Prophet decide they need to meet up at a nanosuit cradle to investigate Prophet's link to the Ceph. This mission was very cool. It looked incredible, it for the first time in a depressing amount of time made the nanosuit look awesome, it finished the setup for the plot effectively with some good dialogue, it had a great use of secondary objectives, it had some very enjoyable combat arenas, but it also had some bad ones. It highlighted the biggest flaw of Crysis 3's gameplay. It wants to have wide open areas, but long engagement distances aren't fun. What Crysis 3 needs to do is to realize that it can have expansive levels if it keeps the engagement distances short. A bunch of buildings, for example, or some close range arenas littered throughout an open map. It seems like it tried to realize this in the next level. But for how long? Prophet begins hunting some Cell soldiers in a night-covered swamp. After he takes one out, the others scatter out of fear of something called Red Star Rising. Psycho says he doesn't know anything about it. The swamp is a bunch of destroyed, very low-rise buildings, only 2 floors, but they're all close together, making traversal very easy. It's a highly vertical maze. The level expands into larger swamps and more complex structures filled with Cell. There's a mix of short to mid engagement distances, and that is exactly what the game needed. The combat here feels great, but it's let down by the bow. The bow is a one-hit kill on almost everything with a tiny drawback time, and at close range, it's damn near impossible to miss. So that's a perfectly silenced, reliable shotgun with ammo that you can easily collect given the range that doesn't even drain your cloak energy, and the turrets? Switch to a thermite arrow and one-hit them. Even if you somehow manage to run out of arrows given that you can pick them off of dead bodies right in front of you, there's a crate you can easily scan. This is the perfect engagement distance, sure, but it's so easy that there's very little fun to be had. The bow only became a noticeable problem here because the game hasn't given you as good an opportunity to use it in close quarters since the start of the game, when you were just getting used to it. The second mission made it very difficult to stay in stealth when Cell showed up, and the stalkers are far too fast to even attempt using the bow. The third mission kept the engagement distances long enough that it wasn't always reliable, but here, in this hunter's playground, it's unstoppable. Well, at least it wasn't unfun. Taking down multiple guys in seconds like the Green Arrow is always going to be pretty cool. And the secondary objective in which we search for intel on the guys who skinned Psycho's nanosuit gave us some good dialogue. After that section, the Ceph attack in full force. These guys look the same as what we got in Crysis 2, but they are far tougher, making them feel as intimidating as they should be. 3 body shots to kill a big boy plus mid-range engagement distances mean the bow is unreliable. Again, attacking guns blazing with any normal gun is even more pointless than it is with Cell given the time to kill on these guys. So you can either stealth your way through, creating a very challenging arena, or just pick up the Ceph weaponry when you're discovered and shoot your way out without an issue. Or both, doesn't matter if you get discovered if you can just blow them away in seconds. Ceph weaponry was a great idea, and if you choose to use them, they give an effective power boost to make killing the Ceph feel far less tough. The problem is, they aren't fun to use in my opinion. They don't feel responsive, they don't look up to par, they make the game far too easy, and by God, is the new HUD color scheme ghastly. An issue made worse by the variety. You only get pinch rifles here. That's one gun that all the ground troopers carry, and you're expected to have fun using only that, despite it making the level a shooting gallery in which armoring up and going guns blazing is the only effective strategy. Was this Crytek's answer to the previous levels being designed entirely for stealth? They still haven't understood that both approaches should be as difficult and as rewarding as each other. If stealth is too easy, players will feel tempted into stealth, meaning there's only really that option. Here, it's too hard, and a shooting gallery is only as good as the weapons you're shooting with. Ceph weapons only, you'll be pancaked if you try anything else. After you've pinch rifled your way through that, you touch a mine carrier which doesn't do much, and you continue your way to the Cell skinning labs. You get a cool build up for the new Ceph Scorcher, a bug type Ceph that, shockingly, burns its enemies. Pretty intimidating, huh? Hahaha, no, 1 electric arrow and he's dead. Okay. Well, you only get 3 electric arrows, so that won't be a problem when you make it further ahead into this really cool stealth arena, where you have to sneak through or fight loads of Scorchers. No, you can pick up the Scorcher's incinerator, hold down mouse 1 for 5 seconds to kill them all, which in turn invalidates the pinger you can reactivate and have fight the Scorchers as the secondary. You can then bring the incinerator up into the next arena with a bunch of Ceph and trivialize that too. It's sad because this arena is actually very well designed, multiple layers of building, little shortcuts to creep through. It gets worse. Ceph scan drones show up here which are meant to detect you in stealth, so even if you have the willpower to go through without Ceph weaponry, it'd even be more punishing. You eventually make it to Psycho and ascend into the skinning labs. He tells you that even with the nanosuit's Ceph mutations, he'd take it to have his suit back. You press through the lab, seeing all the dead scientists and soldiers along the way. A body looking almost exactly like Aztec's lies on a stretcher in the room ahead. Psycho promises to kill whoever did this in an excellently voice-acted outburst. It's incredible what mocap did for this game, and David Kennedy does an outstanding job. You continue into the nanosuit cradle room. Claire warns you that without suit safeguards, the nanites are free and can take any form imaginable, including a Ceph. It'll also open your mind up to the Ceph's hive mind, which could allow you to control them. You get a cool little cutscene of the changes happening and wake up to Psycho stumbling on a video of his own skinning, which the video proves Claire orchestrated. Psycho reacts poorly. Claire says she didn't have a choice. He then starts on Prophet for trying to defend her, questioning his humanity and if he even still has a face. It's an emotionally charged scene, once again well acted and written. Psycho leaves and you're stuck with Claire. Great. Well, that mission was a failure. It never became truly unfun, but the combat was brought down by either making stealth too easy with the bow, or guns blazing too easy with ridiculous Ceph weapons. Level design stayed great throughout, but that means nothing if you're playing the game as a shooting gallery. New Ceph enemy types were trivialized by Ceph weapons and made stealth even less enjoyable. Secondary objectives were pointless, both amounting to nothing. Story was thin, with Psycho's character being the only thing that keeps it going. A poor mission and conclusive proof, I think, that this distinct split in quality really does exist. Red Star Rising opens with one of the worst voice-acted cutscenes I've ever heard in my life.
Oh God. They're gonna obliterate New York. Total, orbital annihilation.
You then walk along some cable over to a Ceph mine carrier which will allow Prophet to test out his newfound connection to the Ceph. It must be said, the Prophet strapping Raptor Team's dog tags to his bow is a really nice touch. You interact with the mine carrier and see a cutscene showing Prophet's connection. Then, after about 5 seconds of cutscene, 20 Ceph show up and no one questions it. They all bow to you thinking you're the Alpha Ceph. Prophet begins to lose himself, but Claire snaps him back by using his real name, Lawrence. Good storytelling. Anyway, the real Alpha Ceph calls his men dumbasses for thinking Prophet's him, and they attack. But it's okay, you have God mode. You can't be damaged, you can't run out of energy. You'd think a connection to the Ceph hive mind would give you new abilities like momentary control or designating targets. I don't know. Anything that would expand the combat sandbox because, you know, we're kind of playing Crysis here. But no, a God mode. When I think Crysis, I think a linear shooting gallery in which it isn't even possible to lose. This is about as entertaining as you'd think. A Devastator shows up, which you can quickly kill with your overpowered bow, and maybe even the pinch rifles lying about. You then head forward and find Cell and some stalkers having a Barney. You can just walk by Cell and the grass isn't concealing enough for the stalkers to pose any kind of threat. Not to mention the fact that you'll almost certainly have weapons capable of tearing them to shreds. You continue through and find a buggy. Claire's apparently dying and Prophet tells her he's coming. You get in the buggy and it's time. That's right, Crysis 3, haha, we're playing Need for Maximum Speed. Crysis 1 and Warhead had driving sections too, but in those games it felt natural given the scale of the maps. You still had to think because you need to switch into the turret seats to fight back. And of course it never looked utterly ridiculous. Here, there's literally a building ramp just in the middle of this dried river? Because this is Crysis, a grounded tactical shooter. What the hell? It's comedic. You drive onto a bridge where you have to stop and go down a stairway where you basically listen to Claire's death. Her squad's getting swarmed by Ceph. You fall into some water which apparently knocks you out. That's never explained. Claire wishes you good luck in the attempt to stop Archangel, which is what the Alpha Ceph is using to power his big scary sky thing. She says she wishes you'd got off to a better start and that they'd make a great team. An entirely natural thing to say after she's only had more reason to be scared of Prophet's connection to the Ceph and is also about to die. This couldn't possibly be a failed, shameless attempt at making her sympathetic. Yeah, sorry guys, that tends not to work when you put it in a character's death scene. Whatever. Prophet wakes up, you punch open a door, and Psycho comes back flying a VTOL. Claire's still not dead apparently. She welcomes his return, but he naturally tells her to piss off. Just kidding. He actually makes a cheesy reference to something Claire said earlier in the game. We've got to keep this game family friendly. There's another buggy and it's time for another ridiculous Need for Speed section. You can fire your guns this time. You don't have anywhere near enough ammo to make it through the level though, so it's much more a game of dodging, if you're even still capable with all the eye rape. There's a secondary objective allowing you to get into an APC, but it's ridiculously slow and weak, and therefore pointless. After that, you come into a huge circular arena with a massive cell base at the center. This is where Archangel is controlled from. You can get Psycho to fly in and take out most of the base's resistance if you head to your left and shoot a generator in the middle of a massive battle. This is a great example of a secondary. You have to go out of your way to make the primary objective a little more easy. Getting into the main base is a little tricky. Ceph and Cell both prioritize shooting you over each other, so getting to the control panel ends up being a nightmare. You hack in, shoot through Cell, and then what? That's what I asked myself when I came through this arena, because there's no way to cross from the outer circle to the inner. The actual way in is to find an obscure panel to activate the other end of this bridge. The bridge folding up is meant to hint at its location, but you can easily miss that in combat. You go up the elevator and it's time for the worst cutscene in Crysis history. You disable Archangel just in time, so it only gets a 5% charge off, which is apparently okay. But then, Rash, who's here now, starts channeling the Alpha Ceph. Original. The Alpha Ceph tells you that you've played into his plan and he's been using you all along, because making a villain intimidating means having them feel the need to boast about a secret plan they supposedly had. Even better, the Alpha Ceph is now going to show you his evil plan. This is Scooby-Doo now. He's going to power a wormhole back to the Triangulum galaxy where his invasion force is going to come through and mash up Earth. Kill me. Apparently, Rush injected himself with nanomachines to keep himself alive for all these years, and that's why the suit couldn't get a read on him. And he's also a techno-zombie and also a Stormcaller main. He then zaps everyone in the most ridiculous montage I've ever seen in my life. This game is setting quite a few records now. Claire apparently gets killed even though she had no reason to be standing in front of him. I don't have any words, guys. This is the best I can do. This is so bad it pains me. It's Crysis 3's version of Hargreaves' betrayal, and ironically, it's Rash's betrayal this time. Psycho shoots Rash, which frees him for some reason. He tells you that you're the chosen one because that's entirely natural when you're dying and have been controlled by a fucking transformer. The Alpha Ceph then starts spinning up his drills. You dive into Psycho's VTOL because of course he would know exactly when and at what angle Prophet was going to jump out in, despite him not even being in the fucking pilot seat. And then it's finally over. Crysis is dead. It's beyond dead. But no, let's just kill it a bit more. It's time for Claire's actual death. Let's not even talk about how cheesy her last words are. Let's just talk about why exactly it was decided that Claire's death is supposed to be important or emotional. She's done nothing for the plot. She's had that skinning plot twist and that's it. Other than that, she's been a total asshole and just a general irritant. Not to mention those goddamn combat shorts. This probably means a lot to Psycho, but it means jack all to the player. Prophet tries to get Psycho's head in the fight, but he resists, explaining that he can't do anything about the Ceph, he's just a human. He couldn't even save one life. And for once, Prophet bites back, telling him that Rash had him pinned down because of the suit, and if Psycho was still wearing his, everyone would be dead. He tells him that it was the people inside the suits, not the suits themselves that fought on Lingshan, and that Claire would want him to go on even if they'll be headed into a slaughter. Psycho agrees and tells Prophet that he's going to be doing the slaughtering. This is the best cutscene in the game. How's that for whiplash? It's great to finally see Prophet's personality have an impact on the game. I think we all wanted to hear him, the leader of Raptor Team and the one at the heart of the mystery across the entire franchise, say it was the people, not the suits who won fights. Crysis 3 even presents its contrast of technology and nature here, with humanity contrasting against the nanosuits. Once again, Prophet and Psycho prove they're the only things worth remembering about this awful story. Well, I'm very pleased to say the next mission bounces straight off this cutscene's quality. Yeah, there was an exception to the first half is good, last half is bad rule of Crysis 3. Mission 6 is actually incredible. We see the most fleshed out action bubble since Mission 3, a concept that had seemingly been absent since then. Not counting this, of course. The concept of the mission is that you need to disable 3 anti-air towers to allow Psycho to do something. The first tower isn't far ahead, it's clearly meant to tutorialize the concept. The island it sits on is highly vertical, with cover and ammo for the gun's blazing route, and pipes, basements and tunnels to stealth your way through. There's snipers if you want to stay long range, and enough cover if you want to go short. Ceph weapons actually work here too. Ceph snipers give a few free kills to the player who bothers to stealth their way up to them, and they punish the player who abuses the pinch rifles on the floor, along with the complex cover making a faster, more accurate human gun far more appropriate. This island is an example of the best possible Crysis 3 level design, and when you take that first tower out, it gets even better. You were already in the action bubble. The next 2 towers are 500 meters apart and you have to get to both. How you do so is the true beauty of this level. You've got a 500 meter walk to each one. On the left, you'll have to deal with pingers and snipers. On the right, a Ceph gunship hunting you as if this were Terminator. Depending on where you go, a secondary objective will activate. There'll be one to give you a full resupply in the North Korean assault rifle, which is the most customizable weapon in the game. A great callback to Lingshan. This is meant to help you with the Ceph arenas where the towers themselves are, but for the gunship you can either use the jaws littered throughout the ruins, or sneak through the half-pipes and take cover behind APCs. Once again, the hunter theme pops up, making the Ceph feel intimidating at the same time. The island the gunship protects is just as well designed as the first. Multiple routes, sightlines, cover all placed to give you as many options as you could ever want. Now onto the next one. There's a buttload of pingers, 2 Ceph snipers and a Ceph turret. It's smart design then that the only 2 buggies in this level are placed here so you aren't torn apart. Not before with the gunship, which would have ruined the fun. An even better application of vehicles is in one of the 2 secondary objectives you get here. A rebel APC is stuck behind some Ceph mines. You find them, hack the mines, and they offer you a ride in the gunner seat. Given the amount of ammo, you can take out maybe 1 pinger with this and make it a little closer to the objective. But there's still a few left. You've got Jaws, Stealth, or the secondary objective in which you rescue a mortar team who blow up anything you paint with your visor, including pingers. You get 2 shots so you can prioritize. With the 3rd and final island complete, that's the end of that. What an incredible area. Perfect combat encounters, engagement distance is kept appropriate to the gameplay, creative mechanics which encourage use of perfectly designed secondary objectives, a heartwarming callback to Crysis 1 and Warhead, and the only great use of vehicles since Warhead. It's good to know that Crytek did achieve their perfect integration, and it's sad we only see it here. Psycho puts down the VTOL and you get in the gunner seat. It's a turret section and a rather in-your-face callback to Crysis 1, but it's actually pretty good. The rotation of the gun is slow enough and the Ceph gunships are far enough off-center that taking them down can actually be quite challenging. It does drag on a bit, but you get to hear Psycho call a gunship a wanker, so it's okay by me. You then make an emergency landing at a nearby building for repairs. It's time for another turret section, but again, Psycho's dialogue makes it entertaining.
You done yet? Yeah. I was just keeping quiet about it, seeing as you were having such a good time. No, of course I haven't fixed it yet. Twat.
After that, it's a boss fight. The Mastermind. You get a courtyard as an arena filled with what you'd expect. Jaws, grenade launchers, everything you'd need to maximize your DPS. The Mastermind has some weird summoning ritual animation in which he gathers a bunch of stuff to shield himself from you. And to attack, he's got some big laser balls of death. Yeah, his mechanics confuse me, but in practical terms, he's about the same as the pingers from Crysis 2. You cloak between cover, gather weapons, and try to attack his weak spot. After you've done enough damage, he zaps you, but Prophet's got the power of QuickTime events and it's on to Phase 2, which is just Phase 1 but with a horde of Ceph to back him up. To say this is a difficulty spike would be an understatement. You've got to deal with an army of Ceph plus the boss in this tiny arena. I wouldn't mind this so much if it weren't for the fact that if you die here, you're sent back to the start of the fight, which is spine-crunchingly irritating. As long as you learn to prepare for the Ceph, the difficulty spike is easily manageable. It's a pretty cool fight, which ends a very cool mission. A great return to form. Can the final mission finish it off? What a piece of shit. I'm not going to spend too much time on this mission because I'm raising my risk of a blood pressure related incident with every breath I take. I'm talking away my life for you guys. That's dedication. Any fucking way. You wake up in a cave after a big white energy thing got angry at the end of last mission. There's a pistol, you pick it up and head through the cave. You come out into a Ceph arena. It's pretty big, but that doesn't mean anything if it's not a Crysis arena. It's a Halo arena. There's no hidden tunnels, nothing to discover, no sandbox. Your only option is to go guns blazing with Ceph weapons and God mode turned on. Yeah, you can overload your suit with nano steroids and become invincible just like the mission from before. And it's not fun here either. It has no effect on cloak or armor. In fact, you can't even turn them on. It's just max resistance. Sometimes you may have to properly challenge yourself and cloak your way over to the next God mode pickup. But there's no escape from Prophet's eye-poppingly poor speech. He goes on at the Alpha Ceph about how he's going to mash him up because the nanosuit's really cool. It's depressing to think someone at Crytek thought this was a good idea. You know how Crysis 2 never made the nanosuit out to be cool? And you know how Crysis 3 fixed that? Well, it unfixed itself. How can these two missions be part of the same game? Once you've done whatever it is the game wants you to do, you go over to the big skybeam and then a circular arena comes out of the floor. And the Alpha Ceph. So, yeah, the Alpha Ceph. This is a boss fight. You have to run in a circle, occasionally juice up, and shoot off each of his 3 drill bits. Why? I mean, surely his head would be the logical target, because internal organs don't tend to be contained within drills? No? And can we just, please, take the time to ask why in the fuck the Alpha Ceph has drills on his head? Drills! Industrial tools, not meant for aliens that come from a different fucking galaxy. Who approved of this design? Who did that?
I will find you. I will fucking find you!
You know, every time you fight this boss, you give away 10 years of your life and triple your risk of psychosis. I don't know if I want to laugh or cry. He's got drills! Well, once you've ruined his chances at getting a job as a handyman, you have to mash spacebar. And now, apparently you're incapacitated despite you getting up immediately the past 3 times you've done this. The Alpha Ceph, instead of just killing you, decides to present his, curry to you? At the pace of a paraplegic sloth, of course, we need to be rescued in the nick of time by Psycho. But he doesn't kill it, no. Prophet picks up his bow, loads an explodey arrow and fires it into the Alpha Ceph's Vindaloo, which instantly kills him, and not in a logical way, he does a fantasy death like in Zelda where beams of light come pouring out of cracks and then he explodes. And that kills all the other Ceph too, because that's how every alien race in the history of the universe works. Oh god. Prophet tries to rescue Psycho, but that doesn't work because of the sky laser. Prophet gets sucked in, which doesn't kill him despite it having enough energy to power a wormhole, and we're back at Crysis. Floating in space, Prophet gives us a cool monologue with some incredible visuals to back it up. He uses his humanity, his name, and Raptor Team's tags to snap him back into the fight. A big squid thing's coming through the wormhole, the Omega Ceph, who you kill by throwing a pencil at him while he's distracted by Psycho's dance moves. No, you kill him instead with a hacking minigame. Archangel kills him instantly. Fair enough, and the wormhole closes. You resume the story with Prophet, now looking like Lawrence Barnes because the nanites are free in that, on an island resembling Lingshan. He is at peace with himself, and the concept of having an unrestricted nanosuit is pretty cool. We'll just ignore the fact that he's still using Alcatraz's body. As for Psycho, we get a really cool cutscene with him hunting down the cell board of directors. He gets in a badass line or two. This is the closure we all wanted from Psycho, and as the final cutscene of Crysis, it's pretty satisfying. But this, as the final mission of Crysis, oh man. Crysis goes out with a whimper, the worst the series has ever been, some of the worst FPS design I've ever witnessed, and an insult, an unyielding insult to Crysis' story. It's not grounded, badass, or mysterious, it's a joke. What a depressing end. Part of the reason I decided to take a critique-style approach to the campaign is because I knew I could. I knew it would better serve my point, and I knew I could fit it into a years later length video. There's only 7 missions in this game. My first run took 4 hours and 11 minutes, take away 15 due to attempting to get round bugs. I believe Crysis 2 took me double that time and there were no bugs in that game. And that truly is shocking. Because although I'd rather a 4-hour good game than a 40-hour bollocks one, this is a 2-hour good game and a 2-hour bollocks one. And in that minuscule runtime, we've had the best level design, and we had the worst. We had what could have been a great story, and then we had an awful one. We had the best graphics and art, and then we had boring, uninspired mediocrity. We had the biggest combat sandbox on paper, but the most restrictive one in reality. I find myself stuck writing this conclusion. I can't say it was a great game that ended the series well and helped Crysis reach its place among the greats. It isn't the masterpiece I wanted it to be, and I can't give the game a depressed post-mortem. It isn't the insult I was scared it might be. But maybe I can say something. I can say why the game is what it is. Crysis 3 had half the time even with CryEngine 3 ready, 2/3 of the team, and I can only guess half the passion. And with that, Crytek had to do what gaming companies do. Expand accessibility before everything else, because accessibility equals sales. Some companies interpret that as make the game easier. Crytek knew what they were doing though. Crysis 2, despite best efforts, wasn't a financial success. They expected 7 million in sales. They got 3 by the end of the only sales period that matters. Crysis was never going to be one of the greats on console, despite what optimistic press releases might have said. But Crytek couldn't leave their franchise dead in the water, and they knew the only way to come back from this was to get back their original community while preserving their new one. Integration, balance. If it won't be one of the greats, it can still go out with a bang. It reached so far. It came so high. It showed us it could be the game we wanted, with gameplay and level design perfected, with a rich story told and characters honored. And then it fell so far. Crysis 3's story could be whatever it liked, but it still had to be Crysis. It still had to resemble the other games, especially since this was a finale, which meant it still had to be grounded, realistic to that universe's reality, which in this case isn't really that far off our own. Crysis 1, Warhead, and 2 were all grounded games, and so was Crysis 3 to an extent up until Mission 5, in which it forgot the definition and never came back. The final mission took it far off grounded and more into we gave the writer's position to a fucking octopus hoping it would have some inside knowledge on the Ceph. The game stuck us in a Need for Speed game and told us to play Crysis. Then it gave us God mode pickups and threw hordes of enemies in an arena you'd expect from Halo and told us to play Crysis. And to finish it off, that. A fight so bad it made me pause the game and write 2 pages of profane notes so I would never forget how insulting it was. I don't know what to say now. If I could go back, what would I say to Crytek? Reduce the runtime, focus development on missions 5 and 7? What, and bring the game down to 3 hours? Would I tell them to just focus on the story and keep 2's gameplay to reduce development costs? And have the franchise die with its fading console fanbase as the PC players continue hating where the series has gone? I couldn't tell them to go back to the design of Crysis 1 Warhead without skyrocketing development cost. No one could do anything. In truth, Crysis would never achieve greatness the moment Crysis 2 was decided to focus on console. Nothing could change Crysis's fate then. Crysis 1 was the game loved by PC fans and hated by everyone with only one PC fan. Crysis Warhead was the game no one knew. Crysis 2 was the game hated by fans of the original and underappreciated by the new. Crysis 3 was the game that took the only path it could and died trying as it always would. Maybe that's a bit too poetic for a video game franchise, but it's not just a video game. It is to you and me, but to Crytek it was a passion, a quest for the best. Looking back at it now, it's as if the series was cursed. No, it wasn't cursed. I loved every game in the series apart from 3, and I didn't hate 3, I just liked it. And there were so many others who loved them too. Crysis got plenty of time in the spotlight as it deserved, but numbers tell the truth. No Crysis sold to expectation, to ambition. It's Crysis's 10-year anniversary this year, on November 13th. And maybe that's the last time the series will be remembered by the community. What's upsetting is, I can't sit here and say that this was an injustice. I can't say that I'm the only one who knows about how good Crysis really was. Crytek and EA were the ones who put a PC shooter into an oversaturated console market because they wanted money. They were the ones who left Crysis 3 with a death sentence from the development start. Maybe their sales was what they deserved, but the special thing about Crysis 3 is, that greed hurt the game itself, not just its sales, community or recognition. Crysis 2 was a great game despite the greed. Crysis 1 was a great game despite the over-ambition, and the sales punished their mistakes accordingly. Crysis 3 was half a great game, half an awful one, and the sales stayed punishing. Poetic justice? A lesson. The Crysis Years Later videos will end here chronologically. If you're watching on release, the video on 1 Warhead will remain unreleased due to CPU issues. But for everyone else, this is it. It's been a pleasure to talk about these great games. It's done a hell of a job for my channel. I loved making them, and I hope you enjoyed watching them. If you did, I'd greatly appreciate an upvote, comment, like, or sub. It keeps me going. I currently have 5 videos planned, and plenty more in conceptual stages, so stay tuned for that. Crysis 1 and Warhead will go up in November. Destiny 2 is most likely up next. Thanks for watching.
Hey! Someone out there? In the VTOL! Get us the fuck out of here!
Thanks, man. Back at the VTOL's loaded up and sell supplies. Go wild. It's all yours.
Us.
Yeah, I know. Stalkers.
And a goddamn serial number.
Without me, you don't have a goddamn chance. So we both make the best of it. I need a sit rep.
Roger that. Cell's high-altitude defense system is completely offline, but it's not over. In fact, it's probably gonna get worse.
Cell's in full retreat, but they'll hold up at the Nexus base. Cell will probably try and turn this whole area into a kill zone. Watch out.